I gave Patricia 11 years of my life, and she took credit for every single one of them. Let me say that again, because even now, sitting here telling you the story, I still can't believe I let it happen for so long. 11 years. 4,000 days of walking into that sterile office building with its humming fluorescent lights and fake plants in the lobby. 4,000 days of handing over my ideas, my late nights, my brilliance. Yes, I'm going to call it that now. And watching her present them as her own while I stood in the back of the conference room like a piece of furniture. If you're watching this from somewhere in the world where you've ever felt invisible at work, where you've ever watched someone else take a bow for your hard work, leave a comment and tell me where you're from. Because what I'm about to tell you, this story of how I finally made her see me, it's for every single one of us who's been erased. And if you want more stories like this, real stories about people who fought back when the world tried to bury them, check the description box below. You're going to want to hear what comes next. My name is Sarah Mitchell. I'm 42 years old, and for the past 11 years, I worked as a senior analyst at Brennan & Associates, a mid-sized consulting firm in downtown Seattle. When I started there, I was 31, fresh from a divorce that had left me hollow and determined. I needed that job. I needed to prove I could rebuild. Patricia Harmon was my supervisor, 15 years older than me, with silver-streaked hair she wore in a tight bun and reading glasses that hung on a chain around her neck like a weapon. She seemed impressive at first, confident, the kind of woman who commanded rooms. I admired her. That admiration died slowly, the way trust dies when you realize it was never mutual. It started small. The first project I completed under her was a market analysis for a tech startup looking to expand into the Pacific Northwest. I spent 3 weeks on it, combing through data, building models, crafting projections that were so precise they practically hummed. I remember the night I finished it, sitting at my kitchen table at 2 a.m. with cold coffee and pride warming my chest. I created something brilliant. Patricia called me into her office the next day. The morning light came through her window and made everything look clean, professional, like a photograph. She smiled at me, a smile I would learn to hate, and said, "This is excellent work, Sarah. Really excellent. I'll take it from here." I thought she meant she'd present it with me. I thought I'd be in that boardroom when she pitched it to the client. I wasn't. I watched from my desk as she walked past with my report in her leather portfolio, and when she came back 3 hours later, flushed with success, she told me the client had loved her analysis. Her analysis. Those were her exact words. I told myself it was a misunderstanding. I told myself she'd meant our analysis. I told myself a lot of things that year, but it kept happening, project after project. My pricing strategy for a retail chain, my operational restructuring plan for a failing manufacturing company, my risk assessment model that saved a client from a disastrous merger. Every single one presented under her name. Every single one applauded while I sat silent. By year 3, I'd stopped telling myself it was a mistake. By year 5, I'd stopped hoping she'd acknowledge me. By year 8, I'd stopped caring about anything except getting through the day without screaming. And then came the Thompson project. Thompson Industries was the biggest client we'd ever landed, a national logistics company looking to completely overhaul their supply chain management system. The contract was worth millions. The partner who brought them in made it clear, whoever led this project successfully would be promoted to director level. It was the opportunity of a lifetime. Patricia assigned it to me. "This one's all yours, Sarah," she said, and for one stupid, hopeful moment I believed her. I worked on that project like my life depended on it. Maybe it did. I interviewed every department head at Thompson. I analyzed 5 years of shipping data. I identified inefficiencies that were costing them hundreds of thousands monthly. I designed a complete overhaul, new routing algorithms, vendor consolidation, predictive maintenance schedules. I built something that would revolutionize how they operated. It took me 8 months. 8 months of 60-hour weeks. 8 months of sacrificing weekends, canceling plans, eating dinner at my desk while the cleaning crew vacuumed around me. My sister stopped inviting me to family dinners. My friends stopped calling. My apartment became just a place where I slept for 4 hours before going back to the office. But I didn't care because I was building something that mattered. Something that would finally be mine. I presented the draft to Patricia on a Tuesday afternoon in March. She sat behind her desk, her reading glasses perched on her nose, nodding occasionally as I walked her through every component. When I finished, she looked up at me and said, "This is extraordinary, Sarah. Truly, you've outdone yourself." My heart soared. I actually felt tears prick my eyes. She continued, "I'll present this to the Thompson executives next week. This is going to be the crown jewel of my career." The room went cold. Or maybe it was me. Maybe all the warmth just drained out of my body in that single moment. "Your career," I said. My voice sounded strange, distant. She blinked at me like I'd said something inappropriate. "Well, yes. As project lead, this goes under my portfolio. You understand how these things work, Sarah. You do the excellent analytical work. I handle the client relationships and strategic positioning. It's always been this way. It's always been this way." Those 5 words broke something inside me that had been cracking for 11 years. But I didn't break down. I didn't cry or yell or quit on the spot like I wanted to. Instead, I smiled. I nodded. I said, "Of course. I understand." And I walked back to my desk with my hands shaking and my vision blurred and a single thought burning through my mind. Asterisk, not this time. Not anymore, asterisk. The presentation to Thompson Industries was scheduled for the following Thursday. Patricia spent that week in meetings, refining my work, which meant changing the formatting and adding her name to every slide. She didn't change a single substantive element. She couldn't. She didn't understand the work deeply enough to change it. On Wednesday, she stopped by my desk, looking almost cheerful. "Tomorrow's the big day," she said. "I'm confident this is going to seal my promotion to executive director." "I'm sure it will," I replied, and she didn't even notice the flatness in my voice. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in my living room with all the lights off, staring at nothing, feeling something shift inside me. Something final. I thought about 11 years of silence, 11 years of being erased, 11 years of watching someone else live the career that should have been mine. If you've ever reached a breaking point, you know what I mean. It's not dramatic like in movies. It's quiet. It's just a moment when you realize you're done being the person everyone takes from. Leave a comment if you've been there, because I need you to understand. What I did next wasn't planned. It was survival. The next morning, I arrived at work at 6:30. I'd made a decision sometime in those dark hours, though I couldn't tell you exactly when. I went straight to Patricia's office. She wouldn't arrive until 8:30. She was nothing if not predictable, and I stood outside her door for a long moment, my heart hammering against my ribs. Then I walked to my desk and I waited. I waited for her to arrive with her coffee and her confident smile. I waited for her to gather the presentation materials. I waited for her to walk past me toward the conference room where the Thompson executives were already assembling. And when she did, when she passed my desk without even a glance, I stood up. My legs felt weak, but my voice was steady when I called out, "Patricia." She turned, impatient. "What is it, Sarah?" "I'm about to go into the most important presentation of my career." "I know," I said. "I just wanted to wish you luck. I'm sure you'll need it." She frowned slightly, but she didn't have time to question the edge in my voice. She just nodded and continued to the conference room, and I sat back down and stared at my computer screen and I waited. The presentation was scheduled to last 90 minutes. It lasted 23. I heard the conference room door slam from 3 offices away. The sound echoed through the hallway like a gunshot, and every head in the office turned toward it. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Keyboards went silent. Even the perpetual hum of the air conditioning seemed to pause, as if the building itself was holding its breath. I didn't move. I sat at my desk with my hands folded in my lap and my eyes on my dark computer screen, watching Patricia's reflection in the monitor as she came storming down the hallway. Her face was the color of old paper, white with splotches of red high on her cheeks. Her hands were shaking so badly the presentation folder she clutched kept rattling. She stopped at my desk. I could feel her standing there, radiating fury and something else, something that smelled like panic. "Sarah!" My name came out like a curse. "My office." "Now." I took my time standing up. I took my time straightening my blazer and picking up my phone. I took my time walking the 15 feet to her office, while everyone in the vicinity pretended not to watch. And when I stepped inside and she slammed the door behind me hard enough to rattle the framed diplomas on her wall, I simply stood there waiting. "What did you do?" Her voice was shaking. What the hell did you do? I blinked at her, my face arranged in perfect, innocent confusion. I'm sorry, I don't understand. Did something go wrong with the presentation? Don't you dare. She pointed a finger at me, and I noticed her nail polish was chipped. She never had chipped nail polish. Don't you dare pretend you don't know. The file was corrupted. Every single slide after the introduction was gibberish. Random characters and broken images, and she couldn't even finish the sentence. Her breath was coming in short gasps. That's terrible, I said. My voice was so calm it surprised even me. Did you have a backup? Her eyes went wild. A backup? I've never needed. She stopped, seemed to realize what she was admitting, and her jaw clenched so hard I could see the muscle jumping. You did this. I don't know how, but you did this. I let a small, sad smile touch my lips. Patricia, I'm just an analyst. I don't have access to your files. I don't have access to your computer. I gave you that presentation last week, and I haven't touched it since. Every word was true. Technically, what I didn't tell her was that I'd embedded a time-delayed corruption script into the master file, a little piece of code hidden so deep in the presentation's metadata that no casual inspection would ever find it. It was designed to trigger exactly 20 minutes after the file was opened in presentation mode. 20 minutes! Just enough time for her to get through the introduction, to get the Thompson executives interested, to get them leaning forward in their chairs expecting brilliance. And then chaos. Slides dissolving into strings of corrupted text. Images fragmenting into pixel storms. Every carefully constructed chart and graph I'd spent months creating, turning into digital noise right before their eyes. Right before her eyes. I'd learned that coding trick from a programmer I'd dated briefly 2 years ago. He'd shown me how easy it was to make files self-destruct under specific conditions. He'd meant it as a party trick. I'd filed it away for later, not knowing then that later would be a Thursday morning in March when I finally decided I was done being invisible. Patricia was still talking, her voice getting higher and tighter. The Thompson executives walked out. Do you understand? They walked out. They said they couldn't trust a firm that couldn't even deliver a functional presentation. 11 months of work, Sarah. 11 months. The biggest contract this company has ever, her voice cracked. She pressed her hand against her desk, steadying herself. I'm so sorry that happened, I said. And I was sorry, in a distant sort of way. Sorry that it had come to this. Sorry that she'd never once in 11 years thought to treat me like a person instead of a resource to mine. She looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw the moment she understood. Not the details. She'd never figure out the details, but the essential truth. She saw it in my eyes, in the way I stood there unflinching while her career burned down around her. You're going to pay for this, she whispered. Whatever you did, I'm going to prove it, and you're going to pay. I nodded slowly. Maybe. But here's the thing, Patricia. Even if you could prove it, which you can't, who's going to believe that someone like me, someone who's just an analyst, someone who's been nothing but loyal and hardworking for 11 years, would sabotage the company's biggest deal? I paused, let that sink in. And even if they did believe it, you'd have to explain why I would do such a thing. You'd have to explain what I might have been angry about. And that explanation would require you to admit a lot of things I don't think you want to admit. Her face went through several colors. Red, white, a sickly gray. Get out, she said, her voice barely audible. Of course. I turned to leave, then paused with my hand on the doorknob. Oh, and Patricia, I'm taking the rest of the day off. I'm feeling a bit unwell. I'm sure you understand. I walked out of her office, through the maze of cubicles where everyone was definitely not watching, gathered my coat and bag, and left the building. My hands didn't start shaking until I was in my car. Then I gripped the steering wheel and I shook and shook and shook, and I didn't know if it was fear or rage or the purest relief I'd ever felt. That weekend, I didn't hear from anyone at work. No calls. No emails. I spent Saturday morning in bed, staring at the ceiling, alternating between victory and terror. What had I done? What was going to happen now? I destroyed the biggest deal in company history. There would be consequences. There had to be. But Sunday evening, my phone buzzed. An email from Patricia. My stomach dropped as I opened it. It was short. Sarah, please come to my office first thing Monday morning. We need to discuss your future at the firm. My future. I read those 2 words over and over. My future. Not your employment status, or your conduct, or any of the corporate euphemisms for firing someone. My future. I didn't sleep that night either. I lay in the dark and I thought about what she might say. Accusations. Threats. Maybe even police, if she'd somehow found evidence. I thought about defending myself, about lawyers, about unemployment and blacklisting, and the end of everything I'd built. But when Monday morning came and I walked into her office at 8 a.m. sharp, Patricia looked different. Smaller. She was sitting behind her desk with her hands clasped in front of her, and she didn't meet my eyes when she spoke. "Sarah," she began, and her voice was careful, measured. "I've been thinking about Thursday. About the presentation. About everything." I stayed silent. Let her fill the space. The firm is conducting an internal review of what happened. The Thompson contract is, as you might imagine, a complete loss. The partners are looking for someone to hold accountable. She paused, and I saw her throat work as she swallowed. "I've been with this company for 19 years. 19 years, Sarah. I built my reputation here. I built my life here." I still said nothing, but something cold was unfolding in my chest. I knew where this was going. "Perhaps this role isn't the right fit," she said finally, and her eyes flicked up to mine for just a second before darting away. "For you, I mean. Perhaps it's time for you to explore other opportunities. Fresh start. Clean break. I'm sure you understand." There it was. After 11 years of taking credit for my work, after destroying the Thompson deal with a corrupted presentation she couldn't even troubleshoot because she hadn't actually created it, she was firing me. Not resigning herself. Not taking responsibility. Firing me. The injustice of it should have made me angry. But I'd gone beyond anger days ago. Now I just felt very calm. Very clear. "I see," I said softly. "And what exactly will you tell people? About why I'm leaving?" She shifted in her chair. "That you and I agreed it was time for you to pursue other challenges. That your skills might be better utilized elsewhere. Nothing negative on your record. A good reference even. Clean and professional. So you're going to quietly push me out, and in return, I keep quiet about everything that happened Thursday. Is that the deal?" "I'm not making a deal, Sarah. I'm simply suggesting that perhaps this role isn't the right fit anymore. For either of us." I nodded slowly, pretended to consider it, let her think I was weighing my options, calculating my losses, preparing to slink away quietly like she wanted. Then I smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of someone who'd spent 11 years preparing for exactly this moment without even knowing it. "I'll wrap up by Thursday," I said quietly. "Though next week should be memorable." She frowned slightly, uncertain. "What does that mean?" "Just that I'll need a few days to finish my projects. You know how it is. Wouldn't want to leave things incomplete." I paused, then added, "You might want to clear your schedule for Monday, though. I have a feeling you're going to be busy." She didn't understand. I could see her trying to read my expression, trying to figure out if I was threatening her or just being professional. She settled on dismissive, the way she always had when she couldn't quite parse what I was saying. She smirked. "Just slightly. Just enough. I'm sure I'll manage, Sarah. I always do." "I'm sure you will," I replied. I left her office and went back to my desk, and I spent that Monday doing something I should have done years ago. I started compiling evidence. Every email where I'd sent her a completed analysis, and she presented it as her own. Every project file with my name in the metadata and her name on the cover. Every performance review where she'd praised my support while taking credit for the outcomes. 11 years of digital breadcrumbs, all carefully preserved in my email archives and cloud storage. By Wednesday, I had everything organized. 237 documented instances of Patricia Harmon claiming credit for work I'd done. Dates, client names, project values, a complete record of theft. Thursday morning, I sent it all to 3 people. Thomas Brennan, the founding partner. Jennifer Walsh, the head of human resources. And David Chun. David Palmer, the partner who'd brought in the Thompson Industries contract and who was currently investigating what had gone wrong with the presentation. Then I packed my personal items into a cardboard box, said goodbye to exactly 2 colleagues who'd ever bothered to learn my name, and I walked out of Brennan and Associates for the last time. If you're still watching, if you're wondering what happened next, make sure you check the description box below for more stories like this. Because what happened next, when the reality of the situation finally hit Patricia, it changed everything. And I need you to hear how this ends. The phone call started at 3 p.m. on Thursday. I was home by then, sitting in my living room with a cup of tea I wasn't drinking, watching the afternoon light slant through my window and trying to understand what I'd done. The silence felt enormous. For 11 years, I'd been drowning in work, in noise, in the constant hum of an office that never truly valued me. Now there was just quiet and my own heartbeat, and the question of whether I'd just committed career suicide. Then my phone buzzed. A number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail. It buzzed again 5 minutes later. Different number. Voicemail again. By 3:30, I received 7 calls, 3 voicemails, and 4 text messages. I finally opened one of the texts. It was from Rebecca, one of the 2 colleagues I'd actually said goodbye to. "Sarah, what did you do?" "The partners called an emergency meeting. Patricia's in there now. People are saying she's getting fired. Call me." I stared at that message for a long time. Patricia. Getting fired? The words looked strange, impossible. Patricia Harmon, who'd been untouchable for 19 years, who'd built an empire on other people's work, who'd smiled dismissively at me just 4 days ago when she tried to erase me for the final time. Getting fired? I didn't call Rebecca back. Instead, I sat there as the afternoon bled into evening, as the calls and messages kept coming, and I waited. Because I knew that sooner or later, someone from the firm would reach out directly. And I needed to decide who I was now. Was I still the woman who stayed silent? Or was I someone new? The call came at 6:15 p.m., Thomas Brennan himself. I stared at his name on my screen for 3 rings before I answered. "Sarah," he said, and his voice was heavy, tired. "We need to talk." "Mr. Brennan," I replied, keeping my voice neutral. Professional. Like I hadn't just blown up someone's career. "I've spent the last 3 hours reviewing the documents you sent. The emails, the project files, the metadata, all of it." He paused, and I heard him take a breath. "Sarah, I don't even know where to begin. How long has this been going on?" 11 years, I said simply. From my first month at the firm. The silence on his end stretched, so long I thought the call had dropped. Then, Jesus Christ, 11 years. And no one knew. No one saw. People saw, I said quietly. They just didn't care enough to say anything. Another silence. "We terminated Patricia's employment this afternoon. Effective immediately. For cause. We're conducting a full audit of every project she's claimed credit for over the past decade. If even half of what you've documented is accurate, and I have no reason to believe it isn't, then this represents the most egregious violation of professional ethics I've encountered in 30 years of practice. I should have felt victorious. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I just felt exhausted. "Sarah, I need you to come back. Not to your old position. God, we need to have a conversation about how we let this happen in the first place, but as a consultant on this audit. We need to untangle 11 years of work. We need to understand what projects were actually hers and what was stolen from you." His voice cracked slightly on that last word. "And frankly, we need to make this right. I don't know how, but we need to try." "I need time to think about it," I said. "Of course. Take whatever time you need. But Sarah, I'm sorry. I'm so deeply sorry that this happened under my watch, and that we failed you so completely." The apology hit me harder than I expected. I felt tears prick my eyes, the first real tears since Thursday's presentation. "Thank you," I whispered. After we hung up, I sat in the dark. I hadn't bothered turning on lights as evening fell, and I let myself cry. Not sad tears, not happy tears, just release. 11 years of holding everything in, and finally it was out. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Rebecca. I always knew something was off about her taking credit for everything. "A bunch of us are going out for drinks to celebrate her firing. Want to join?" Celebrate. They wanted to celebrate. I stared at that message and felt something bitter twist in my chest. Where had these people been for 11 years? Where were they when Patricia was erasing me, when I was working 80-hour weeks only to watch someone else take the applause? Now they wanted to celebrate. Now that it was safe, now that the story had a clear villain and an ending. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened my laptop and I started writing. Not for work. Not analysis or reports or any of the professional writing I'd been doing for over a decade. I wrote about what had happened. All of it. The slow erosion of being unacknowledged. The Thompson Project. The corrupted presentation. The documentation I'd compiled. The firing. I wrote it like I'm telling you now, raw and honest and real. I published it on Medium at 11 p.m. that night. I didn't expect anyone to read it. I just needed to put it somewhere outside my head. By Friday morning, it had 3,000 views. By Friday afternoon, 12,000. By Friday evening, someone had shared it on LinkedIn, and it started going viral in professional circles. By Saturday, I was getting interview requests from Forbes, Harvard Business Review, and 3 different podcasts about workplace culture. Sunday morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls and 43 emails. One of them was from an attorney at a labor law firm in New York. The subject line read, "Class Action Opportunity, Patricia Harmon's Other Victims." I opened it with shaking hands. The email explained that after reading my story, 3 other former Brennan and Associates employees had reached out to this attorney. All 3 had worked under Patricia at different points over the past 15 years. All 3 had similar experiences: work stolen, credit taken, career stunted. They were considering a civil suit against both Patricia and the firm for systematic theft of intellectual property and hostile work environment. "We believe there may be many more victims," the email concluded. "Would you be willing to speak with us?" I sat there in my Sunday morning silence, still in my pajamas, with my cold coffee and my racing heart, and I thought about what it meant to be a victim versus what it meant to be a survivor. I thought about Patricia, who was probably in her own home right now, trying to figure out how her empire had crumbled in less than a week. I thought about the 11 years I'd given her, and whether I wanted to give her any more of my time and energy, even in the form of a lawsuit. And then I thought about those 3 other people. 3 other Sarahs. 3 other someones who'd been erased and silenced and told their work belonged to someone else. 3 other people who might be sitting in their own Sunday morning silence, wondering if speaking up would make any difference. I wrote back, "Yes. Let's talk." The next few weeks were a blur. The attorney's name was Michelle Rodriguez, and she was a woman in her 50s with steel gray hair and an intensity that reminded me of who I might become if I kept fighting. She explained that we had a strong case, not just against Patricia, but against the firm itself for enabling her behavior for so long. By the end of May, 7 people had joined the potential lawsuit. 7 people whose careers Patricia had built her reputation on. 7 people who'd been told to stay silent, be grateful, know their place. We started meeting, first over Zoom, then in person at Michelle's office in New York. I flew out for a weekend and met them all. Jake Morrison, who'd worked under Patricia from 2009 to 2012. Diane Fletcher, who'd lasted only 8 months before quitting. Robert Hayes, who'd had a nervous breakdown after 3 years of watching his work get stolen. And 4 others, each with their own version of the same story. We sat in that conference room, and we shared our experiences, and something remarkable happened. We started laughing. Not happy laughter, the kind of laughter that comes from recognizing the absurdity of shared trauma. The kind of laughter that says, "This really happened to all of us. This wasn't just in our heads." She once presented my entire risk management framework to a client, Jake said, shaking his head. 3 months of work. Didn't even change the footer where my initials were embedded in the document properties. The client actually asked why her name was on the cover when JM was in the metadata. She told them JM stood for Joint Methodology. We all laughed, and then we all stopped laughing, because it wasn't actually funny. It was just true. By June, Brennan and Associates reached out with a settlement offer. They would admit no wrongdoing, but they would compensate all 7 of us for workplace grievances and implement new policies about project attribution and employee recognition. The compensation was substantial, 6 figures for each of us, with mine being the highest given the length and severity of my experience. Michelle advised us to take it. "You could fight this in court for years," she said, "and you might win more. But you'd also spend years reliving this trauma, having your professional reputations questioned, fighting discovery battles. This is a good outcome. A real acknowledgement and real compensation. I looked around at the other 6 people in that conference room. What do you all think? One by one, they nodded. Take the money. Take the acknowledgement. Take the new policies that might protect the next person. Let it end. So we did. On July 15th, exactly 4 months after the Thursday that changed everything, I deposited a settlement check into my bank account. It was more money than I'd made in any single year of my career. More money than I'd ever had at once. And it felt, I don't know. It felt like something. Not quite justice. Not quite revenge. Just something. I still hadn't decided if I would go back to Brennan and Associates as a consultant. Thomas Brennan had called twice more, reiterating the offer, promising things would be different. But different how? With Patricia gone. Sure, but in a system that had enabled her for 19 years. In an industry that was probably full of other Patricias, stealing credit from other Sarahs. If you've stayed with me this far, if you've listened to this whole story, I want you to know that I see you. If you've ever been the person doing the work while someone else took the credit, if you've ever wondered if speaking up would make any difference, if you've ever felt invisible in a place that should have valued you, I see you. We're going to talk about what I decided to do next, but first, make sure you check the description below for more stories like this, because knowing we're not alone in these experiences, that might be the most important thing of all. I didn't go back to Brennan and Associates. Not as a consultant, not as anything. Instead, I did something I'd been too afraid to do for 20 years. I started my own firm. Mitchell Analytics launched on September 1st, exactly 6 months after the Thursday that changed everything. It was just me at first, working from my apartment with a laptop and a phone and a website I built myself over the course of 3 sleepless weeks. I had no clients, no reputation of my own, or at least, none that I could prove, since my reputation had been living under someone else's name for over a decade. But I had something else. I had a viral story about workplace theft that had been read by over 500,000 people. I had a network of 7 other people who'd been through the same experience and who were all rooting for me. I had a settlement that gave me a financial cushion for exactly 18 months if I was careful. And I had something I'd never had before, absolute, crystalline clarity about my own worth. The first client came from an unexpected place. Do you remember David Palmer, the partner at Brennan, who'd brought in the Thompson Industries contract? 2 weeks after I announced my new firm on LinkedIn, he called me. "Sarah," he said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. "I've got a problem. I've got a client who needs exactly the kind of supply chain analysis you did for Thompson. The real one, I mean. The one Patricia butchered. Are you available?" I wanted to say yes immediately, but I'd learned something in the past 6 months about the power of pausing, of not being so eager to please that I undervalued myself. "What's your timeline?" I asked instead. "Flexible. And Sarah, I'm prepared to pay market rate for senior-level consulting work, which, for the record, is about 3 times what Brennan was paying you. 3 times. I did the math in my head and felt dizzy. "Send me the details," I said. "I'll let you know by Friday if I can take it on." I took it on, and I delivered an analysis that was even better than what I'd done for Thompson, because this time, I wasn't working 80 hours a week while someone else took credit. This time, every hour I worked was mine. Every insight had my name on it. Every presentation I gave was to clients who knew exactly who had done the work. David's client loved it. They signed a contract for ongoing consultation. They referred me to 2 other companies. Those companies referred me to others. By December, I had more work than I could handle alone, so I hired my first employee, Jake Morrison, one of the 7 from Patricia's collection of victims. By March of the following year, I hired Diane Fletcher as well. We never called ourselves survivors or victims. We were just people who decided that our work should belong to us, and we built a company on that principle. Every project had clear attribution. Every team member got credit for their contributions. We turned down clients who wanted us to work anonymously or who seemed like they might pull a Patricia on us. We were selective, careful, intentional, and we grew. By the 2-year anniversary of that Thursday in March, Mitchell Analytics had 12 employees, a real office in downtown Seattle with windows that actually opened, and a client list that included 3 Fortune 500 companies. We'd been profiled in Fast Company and Forbes. I'd given a TEDx talk about workplace attribution and intellectual property theft. The Medium post I'd written that Sunday night had been expanded into a book deal, I'm still working on that manuscript, but it'll be out next year. But here's what no one asks me about in those interviews and profiles. Was it worth it? I think about that question a lot. I think about the 11 years I lost. The career I could have had if I'd spoken up sooner, if I'd been braver, if I'd valued myself enough to walk away the first time Patricia took credit for my work instead of the 101st time. I think about the money I didn't make, the opportunities one missed, the version of myself I could have been if I hadn't spent over a decade making someone else successful. And then I think about who I am now. I'm 44 years old. I run a multi-million-dollar consulting firm. I employ people who were once where I was, invisible, undervalued, stolen from, and I make sure they never feel that way again. I wake up every morning and I own my work. All of it. The successes and the failures and everything in between. No one can take that from me because I built it with my own hands, and everyone knows it. So is it worth it? The 11 years of silence, the betrayal, the rage, the revenge? I don't know. That's the honest answer. I don't know if I would choose this path if I could go back and do it differently. Maybe I would have left Patricia after year 1. Maybe I would have documented everything from the beginning and gone to HR immediately. Maybe I would have never taken that job at all. But I also know that the woman who could build Mitchell Analytics from nothing, she was forged in those 11 years of being erased. The woman who could corrupt a presentation file and watch her supervisor's career implode without flinching, she learned that steel spine from years of swallowing injustice. The woman who could stand in front of rooms full of executives and know, absolutely know, that she belonged there. She earned that certainty by finally refusing to be invisible. So maybe it was worth it. Or maybe worth it isn't the right question. Maybe the right question is, what do you do with the person you become after you've been broken and rebuilt yourself? I saw Patricia once more, about a year and a half after everything happened. I was meeting a client at a coffee shop in Pioneer Square, and she was there, sitting alone at a corner table with a laptop and a cup of tea she wasn't drinking. She looked smaller than I remembered, older. Her hair was completely silver now, no longer just streaked. She wasn't wearing the power suits I remembered, just jeans and a sweater that had seen better days. Our eyes met across the coffee shop. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then she did something I never expected. She nodded at me. Not a friendly nod, not an apology, just acknowledgement. The smallest possible recognition that we'd both been there, in that office, in that story, and we both survived what came after. I nodded back. Then I met my client, and I didn't think about Patricia Harmon for the rest of the day, or the rest of the week, or honestly much since then. Because here's what I learned. Revenge isn't actually about the other person. It's about you. It's about reclaiming the parts of yourself that someone tried to take. And once you've done that, once you've rebuilt yourself into someone who can't be erased, the person who tried to erase you becomes irrelevant. I heard through the professional grapevine that Patricia never worked in consulting again. The industry is smaller than you'd think, and word gets around about people who steal credit. Last I heard, she was doing contract work for small firms, nothing with her name attached, nothing that gave her the power she once had. Part of me feels something like pity for her. Part of me feels nothing at all. Mostly I feel grateful. Grateful that I finally found the courage to stop being complicit in my own erasure. Grateful for the 7 other people who came forward and showed me I wasn't alone. Grateful for Jake and Diane and all the people who've joined Mitchell Analytics because they believe work should be attributed to the people who actually do it. Grateful even for those 11 years of silence because they taught me exactly what I would never accept again. My sister asked me once, about 6 months ago over dinner, if I regretted the way I'd handled things. "You could have just quit," she said. "You could have left and started your business without the hole, you know. The corruption, the explosion, the drama." I thought about that for a long moment, swirling wine in my glass. "Maybe," I said finally, "but I don't think I would have had the fire to build something real if I just walked away quietly. I needed to burn it down first. I needed to watch her face when she realized she couldn't do the work herself, that she built her entire career on people she'd underestimated. I needed that." "That sounds like revenge," my sister said, not quite approving. "It was revenge," I agreed. "And it was also justice. And it was also survival. Sometimes those things look the same." She didn't argue with that. If you're still here, if you've listened to this entire story from that first Thursday to this moment now, over a year later, I want to tell you something. If you're in a situation like I was, if someone is taking credit for your work, if you feel invisible, if you've convinced yourself that it's not that bad or it'll get better, or you just need to work harder, please hear me. It won't get better. Not on its own. Not unless you make it better. You don't have to do what I did. You don't have to corrupt files or blow up careers or become the villain in someone else's story. But you do have to value yourself enough to stop participating in your own erasure. Document everything. Know your worth. And when the time comes, and you'll know when it comes, be ready to walk away from anyone who can't see you. Because here's the thing they don't tell you about revenge. The best revenge isn't making someone else fail. It's building something so successful, so undeniably yours, that no one can ever question whether you earned it. The best revenge is becoming the person you always could have been if someone hadn't been standing in your way. The best revenge is living well, working authentically, and never again letting anyone make you invisible. I think about that Thursday in March sometimes. The presentation that destroyed Patricia's career and, in a strange way, gave me mine. I think about the look on her face when she came storming out of that conference room, when she realized that for once, just once, there were consequences for taking something that didn't belong to her. And I think about the moment I decided to send that documentation to the partners. The moment I chose to be seen, even if it meant burning everything down to make that happen. It was the scariest moment of my life. It was also the moment I started really living. Last month, a young woman reached out to me through Mitchell Analytics' website. She'd read my story. She was in a similar situation, 3 years at a firm, supervisor taking credit for everything, feeling trapped and invisible and like she was going crazy. She wanted to know what she should do. I met her for coffee. I looked at this 26-year-old version of myself, with her nervous energy and her folder full of documentation she'd already started keeping, and I told her the truth. You have options, I said. You can go to HR. You can look for a new job. You can even start your own thing if you have the resources and the risk tolerance. But whatever you do, don't wait 11 years. Don't give someone 11 years of your life hoping they'll suddenly see you. They won't. People who erase others don't suddenly develop empathy. What if I'm wrong? She asked. What if I'm overreacting? What if it's not as bad as I think? I reached across the table and touched her hand. Listen to me. If you're asking yourself whether it's as bad as you think, it's probably worse. Trust yourself. You're not crazy. You're not overreacting. And you deserve to have your name on your work. She started crying right there in the coffee shop, and I understood. Because sometimes the hardest thing is just having someone believe you. Having someone say, yes, this happened to you. Yes, it matters. Yes, you deserve better. She left that firm 2 weeks later. Last I heard, she'd landed at a company with a strong attribution policy and a manager who actually values her. I don't know if she'll start her own firm someday, or if she'll build a different kind of career entirely. But I know she won't spend 11 years being invisible. And maybe that's the real ending to the story. Not Patricia's firing, or my company's success, or the settlement money, or any of the dramatic moments. Maybe the real ending is one young woman leaving a toxic situation 3 years in instead of 11. Maybe it's the ripple effect of one person refusing to be erased, and that refusal giving others permission to do the same. I don't know what Patricia thinks about when she's alone now. I don't know if she has regrets, or if she's convinced herself she was the victim somehow, or if she even thinks about me at all. And the truth is, I don't care anymore. She's not part of my story anymore except as the antagonist in the origin tale of who I became. What I do know is this. Every morning, I walk into an office with my name on the door. Every project we complete has proper attribution. Every person who works for me knows that their work belongs to them. And every time I sign a contract, or give a presentation, or publish an analysis with Mitchell Analytics at the top, I feel a satisfaction that has nothing to do with revenge and everything to do with finally being visible. That Thursday in March, the day Patricia told me perhaps this role wasn't the right fit, the day she smirked at me because she thought I was powerless, the day everything changed, it was the worst day of my professional life and the best day of my professional life. It was the day I stopped waiting for someone else to see me and started demanding to be seen. It was the day I stopped being a victim and became something else entirely. I don't have a neat bow to tie on this story. I don't have a lesson that makes it all make sense. What I have is a life I built from the ashes of someone else's betrayal. What I have is work that belongs to me. What I have is the knowledge that I will never, ever let anyone make me invisible again. And if you take nothing else from the story, take this: you are not invisible. Your work matters. Your contributions matter. And anyone who tells you otherwise, anyone who takes credit for what you've built, they're not just stealing your work. They're stealing your future. Don't let them. Don't wait 11 years like I did. Speak up. Document everything. Know your worth. And when the moment comes, and it will come, be brave enough to let it all burn down if that's what it takes to finally be seen. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being here with me from that first shocking moment to this ending that's really just a beginning. If this story meant something to you, if it reminded you of your own experiences, or gave you courage to make a change, check the description box below. There are more stories like this. Stories of people who refused to stay silent, who fought back against injustice, who rebuilt themselves after being broken. We're all connected by these experiences, and sometimes just knowing we're not alone is the thing that gives us strength to keep going. My name is Sarah Mitchell. I gave Patricia Harmon 11 years of my life, and she took credit for every single one of them. But I took myself back. And if you're in a situation where someone is trying to erase you, I hope my story helps you take yourself back too. Because here's what I know for sure now: the damage wasn't done when Patricia fired me. The damage was done every single day I stayed silent. And the healing didn't start when she got fired, or when I got my settlement, or when my company became successful. The healing started the moment I decided I was done being invisible. That's the moment everything changed. That's the moment I became who I am now. And I wouldn't trade her for anything.